Massive Hurricane Florence is set to slam into the Carolinas, potentially causing catastrophic damage, and somehow it's now President Trump's fault. The Washington Post out with an op-ed titled, "Another hurricane is about to batter our coast. Trump is complicit." According to the Post, because President Trump doesn't bend over backwards to support climate change, he's now to blame. And I go to our resident climate change expert, Greg Gutfeld.
This always drives me crazy. Okay, I'll start with two facts and then have an overall assessment of the situation. Okay, so from
close your ears. He's going to talk facts now.
Okay, so from 1915 to 1965, that's 51 years, that there were 19 major hurricanes. Now, if you go 51 years from there, 1966 to 2016, you've only had 7. So that's 37% as frequent. So if there's rising climate change and fewer of these major hurricanes, there goes your theory. But there is something, there's an increase in damage over time with these hurricanes. But that's not due to the storm intensity. It's because we're increasing infrastructure in coastal areas. So you can blame not global warming, but you could blame the builders for building in areas where there's storms. But I will say this, to be fair, because I know Juan disagrees with me, the jury's probably still out on this stuff. It's going to take time to look at everything. The big problem is what I call the Trump floater. When you go to a bar and you order like a whiskey with a Bailey's floater or a Myers floater,
No.
every story is now a drink. Every story is a drink with a Trump floater. So it's like whether it's about like yesterday 9/11 or hurricanes or any kind of event, psychological disorders, depression,
Can't sleep.
It's Trump. So everything now has a Trump angle. Everything is a drink with a Trump floater, and it's because people in the media have Trump on the brain and they're using that instead of their brain.
Why are all your analogies about bars and bathrooms?
One always leads to the other.
That's true. That's true. I came prepared, and I'm going to address you as Mr. Williams because I found out how old you are, Juan. And I knew this was going to be a very statistical type of segment. I brought a chart. Can we see the chart, please, in the control room?
Uh-oh.
Look at this chart.
Ooh.
America, the largest decline in CO2 emissions in the world. Look at us all the way up at the top. We're reducing our CO2, and countries like China, the European Union, Canada, they're increasing their CO2. So first year of the Trump presidency, CO2 is down. Now, Juan, explain that one.
Maybe you kept your mouth shut in the hot air, didn't get out. But I will say this. You have us as the #1 emitter of these gases, and you say we make some steps to pull back, and therefore everybody else is to blame? I don't get it.
We're decreasing our CO2.
Yes, we're decreasing, and we should
China
be.
And India
Correct.
and the EU are increasing theirs.
Well, because they have an increasing base of middle-class people, factories, and the like. They're still gaining a middle class. We're an established
The EU
economy.
is gaining a middle class?
They are. They're still,
okay,
not the EU, but China, a lot of what they call the BRIC nations, Brazil, India. They're building up, Jesse. So the idea is that the United States, as a successful economy with a large middle class, would set an example about the need for reducing CO2
and
emissions.
We are, and
guess
how we're
no,
doing
we're
that?
not. Let me just
fracking.
No, we're not.
That's why
Let me just tell you
statistics
something.
are what they are.
Here's what the Washington Post editorial board said. Guess who has just signed legislation to allow the expansion of methane gas in our release in our country? Donald Trump. Donald Trump, and Republican orthodoxy has become, we're the contrarians. We don't believe these scientists. We don't believe any of this about increasing temperatures. And Greg, there have been increasing temperatures over the last dozen years in the world.
Well, it's increasing temperatures under my collar because you're making me very angry, Williams. Mr. Williams.
There you go.
But the implication is then that the United States should take measures which often, frankly, are job-killing measures. Hundreds of thousands of people in this country lose their jobs because it hurts energy production, and these other sources of energy production are not yet ready to roll and compete with coal and otherwise. And other countries just get to do nothing, and what we help them, we assist, we pay.
Well, you're thinking a little.
Because that was what the Paris Accord was about.
No, it wasn't. And I think your frame is a little off there, because the reality is that now alternative energy development has produced more jobs than, let's say, coal mining.
Oh yeah, there's tons of windmill jobs out there, Juan.
They're backed by power stations.
Right. Dana, let's get some facts here. This was about Donald Trump and pre-blaming him for the hurricane. I mean, it used to be the hurricane comes and then they attack him. Now they're launching a pre-attack.
President Obama's administration, Hurricane Sandy was blamed on Republicans as well.
So they always get
Republicans are always blamed for hurricanes. I talked to Charlie Hurt yesterday, one of our Fox News contributors. He lives in the path of the hurricane, and he said that people there are still talking about Hurricane Camille from 1969 when it was a terrible hurricane, and that was before these rises. I do think that America plays an important role here, and that is because we are innovative and we have a growing economy right now. That means you can invest in new technology so that you can get to the point that Jedediah was making, which is, can we continue to figure out a way to decrease them? I would say from a political standpoint, the Republican Party could stand to talk about this a little bit more. They have a good position that you're going to lose an entire younger generation if you don't try to talk to them about this. It's one.
But you can't win. You can't win.
You could just not try.
Right. Well, the thing is, right now, what's happening is the liberals, the left, the liberals, they have replaced global warming with Trump. It used to be that global warming caused war, shark attacks, and depression. But now they've just said, no, Trump causes everything bad. And so now we have to do our best to somehow reduce the amount of Trump in the atmosphere.
You can support innovation. I think that's a great idea.
An invasion?
But the problem is...
No, innovation.
But the problem is that they want... First of all, the United States can't do this by ourselves. If we do great things when it comes to other energy sources and the rest of the world doesn't follow suit, it's not going to accomplish anything. And also, if these other areas are not ready to compete with coal, I'm all for it. I'm all for these innovations. But if they're not ready, you can't kill one industry. Then all these people have nowhere to go, nowhere to work. So it has to. That's why the free market exists.
Remember when Hillary Clinton said to the coal miners, we can help you move on, find new kinds of jobs. It was Hillary.
She also said we want to put you out of business.
Yeah, no.
They put her out of business.
What we want to do is help people move on. But to your point, it sounded like you're making the case for the Paris climate deal because that locks in other countries to make commensurate sacrifices.
Locks them in like 100 years from now.
It locked us.
I think you need to reread the Accords.
And the methane piece is a little bit more complicated than how Juan described it. We have to tease, so I will just
tell me about it.
Read about
it. And
I
think the most important thing is whatever shoes Melania wears to the hurricane-ravaged states, they better not be too expensive because she's going to get attacked.